Don't settle. Don't accept your current limitations. Don't just go, well, I have this pain and therefore I need this and that's the end of the story.
Welcome home to You Are the Compass with producer and host Jessie Clayton. This is a podcast about the turning points in life that awaken us to new directions and the inner guidance that helps us navigate them. Reset your headings as we dive deep with guest interviews, quick fine-tune series, and inspiration from all corners of the globe. From wherever in the world you have joined from today, you have arrived. Hi, and welcome home to You Are the Compass Fast 10 series. This particular series has gone through different tangents, rabbit holes, and right from the get-go, that was purely my intention. And ultimately, shall we coin it the phrase, ulterior motive. From mindset resets, the musings of my father about money, to an author of linked lyrical poetry. The aim is to go with the flow. However, I feel our next guest might just have something to run past you that will help you not only on the running track, though perhaps a key piece of life advice that could just be the hydration hit your muscles and mind might need. Sam, welcome home to You Are the Compass.
Thanks, Jessie. Thanks for having me.
So, Sam, the idea of the Fast 10 episodes on You Are the Compass are designed for our listeners to get a short, sharp insight into various topics. Can we start off with pop running? Why the name and why is it so important? Ready, set, pop.
Cool. Okay. I'm a little bit daunted, but I've been running for over 20 years. And I started with a whole bunch of different endurance sports, including trail running. And then I found myself doing triathlon. And then I was doing that during my university degree. And that interested me to then study cycling biomechanics as part of my thesis at uni. And so I guess I've always had this sort of analytical mind when it comes to sport. And so that carried on with me as I started through, adventure racing. I got some injuries, then I had to pause and get stronger. And then I moved from Victoria, where I was living, to the Sunshine Coast, and then got into triathlon in a bigger way, and then learned that there are different ways to run. So you can change how you run. It doesn't have to just be the same all the time. So I learned chi running, which is a cool thing. And that was very good. It made me a lot faster at the time. Then I kind of thought, I've fixed this, I've solved it, it's all good. Fast forward about 10 years, I started trail running in a bigger way, like ultra running, so 2017. And when I started doing long distance trail running, I had massive hip flexor problems, and I realized that I hadn't fixed the problem. I'd kind of found the way that worked for the road running and other things that I'd been doing, but I hadn't really solved it. And so then I started doing all kinds of tinkering, running barefoot and different things. I found some other resources, different people that taught running, and learned. It took me a couple of years, but I figured out this is how you run using your whole body. And it's been a progression even since then. I've learned more and more as I've gone. And when I learned that, I was like, this is game changing. How come nobody knows how to do this? And it turns out that it's really hard to teach it. So I started by trying to teach it. That was back in 2019. I was living in California and working for Google at the time. So when I started doing that, I was like, I want to teach this further. So I started a YouTube channel, and what am I going to call it? And I called it Pop Running Form, because the pop is like the way you run. You're kind of getting this pop and that power element. People talk about getting pop in your running, and it comes from hitting your foot on the ground and getting the power back into the ground immediately, and you get that recoil effect. So that's where that comes from. And people who I've taught have clicked when I've taught them. They're like, oh, is this why you call it pop? I'm like, yeah. So it makes sense. It's a natural, intuitive thing. That's when I started. And then COVID happened in 2020. We were in California. We had our third child there in the middle of lockdown. Wildfires came, and there was smoke everywhere. It was awful. We couldn't go anywhere or see anyone, so we were very just insulated as a family. But we weren't happy about the quality of the air and everything, not having family around. So we managed to get out of California and come home. spent 2 weeks in an apartment in lockdown with 3 kids, including a newborn. So that was fun. And then got out of that, and I managed to get a job working remotely for another Californian company in a sports science area, like it was a sports tech company. So that was fascinating, and I got to work with some really high level coaches and really well respected people in various fitness areas, like Pilates and functional training and endurance sports. So yeah, so I learned a lot from a sports science degree perspective, and that kind of helped me because I continued teaching and coaching. But then after a few years of that, I got bored and a bit overwhelmed and stressed by the job, and decided that I wasn't going to try and find another software job, that I wanted to go down the teaching and coaching route, and which is what I've been doing for the last 18 months. And in that time, I've managed to teach more and more people. And as I've taught more people, especially online, I've learned more about how to teach, and I ended up helping my parents, who are in both 70, 71, and especially my dad, and realizing that he had no glute awareness, and able to teach him how to get glute awareness. And that's become a foundational part of what I do. So I'm teaching people how to use their whole body biomechanically well, and I created this thing called the functional step from that. And so now I teach running, but from a very fundamental perspective first, just body awareness, through to moving in a different way than most people currently do.
I love that. And how do you think, just to sort of track off on a different angle, does the breath come into it as well? Our breathing, everyone I sort of come across, they're like, oh, I just can't breathe enough to run a kilometer. I get out of breath. And I was like, well, you're not using your lungs properly. But does that all incorporate into how they're moving their body as well?
Yeah, I kind of teach that sort of as a secondary thing, because learning the movement stuff by itself is quite a lot of brain work. But yeah, when I left software engineering and decided I wanted to do this, I kind of created a more thorough program, which included the movement, but then layers add in with the breathing, and breathing is fundamental. I think like the interesting thing about breathing, and it's similar to moving, is it's something we do anyway. Without really thinking about it, we do it. But if we do think about it, we can actually do it much better. And when we actually apply ourselves to learning breathing in a much more functional, natural way, then we can actually get more out of ourselves. So they're very synonymous between the breathing and the moving. Both can be quite highly impactful. And the other cool thing about breathing is that it's like a bridge between the physical and the mental, because your breathing affects your physical state, which affects your mental state.
100%. And you mentioned something about the shoes as well, and like running barefoot. I've only ever had experience of running in probably not the most ideal shoes, or what the rest of the running community deem as appropriate footwear. I actually run in the Vibram like 5-finger toe shoes. I used to run in like Frankie, like flat court shoes. Yeah. And people are like, how do you do that? How do you even operate in them and run in them? I was like, because I'm engaging the movements in my body to be able to hit those strides, I guess. What would your response be to that? People like, oh, well, I've got this right footwear. I did all this research and I spent hundreds of dollars on this pair of shoes, but they're just not working. Would you go and then look at their stride? Would someone reach out to you and be like, I'm just not tracking the way I want to track in the race? Or how would your approach be to that?
I feel like if we are accepting that we have a specific way of moving for the snapshot in time, you'll probably have various compensation patterns going on, and you may have some various instabilities and weaknesses and whatnot, which can cause overload in your feet. So having supportive footwear in that sense makes sense. But when I teach people, I teach them barefoot, because that's like enabling our body to work optimally. And then once you understand how to do that in a natural, like full biomechanical sense, then having shoes that interrupt that doesn't make sense anymore, because once you understand how to move completely in that holistic sense, then your body is already designed to work perfectly. So as long as you're using it correctly, then the shoes are not necessarily necessary. Um, yeah, so I don't wear supportive shoes. I just wear ultras, which are completely flat with a wide toe box. So they just stop the impact, potentially from rocks and various things when I'm running.
And circling back round to it, we mentioned sort of at the start, you've helped various people of different capacities, ultra marathon runners, your parents. What would you say the biggest piece of advice for them as an ultra marathon runner, as a world title holder, and then someone everyday life that's just trying to walk correctly? What would be
Mm.
your little piece of life advice that you're like, this is what you start with?
My number one piece of advice is don't settle. Don't accept your current limitations. Don't just go, well, I have this pain and therefore I need this and that's the end of the story. I would say be open to working on improving because it's possible. And as long as you have that mindset, you will work on improving. I'm providing resources for helping people to start to realize what is possible beyond what they may think currently.
Sam, thanks for running round to us. It's been great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Jesse. Thanks for having me. It's awesome.
Thank you. You have been listening to You Are the Compass Fast 10 series with our guest Sam from Pop Running Form and your producer and host Jesse Clayton. Where shall we set our next compass headings? Well, how about I take you along and we can see where our next adventure could be.